to be able to present this information to you today and share with you some of the functional aspects of this software. You'll be talking with myself, Carrie Rosewald, and my business partner, Amanda Mayer, today about the functional aspects of Dynamics 365. We are independent trainers and consultants with New View Strategies. We've included our information for how you can reach us here, and we'll let you know that our background with Dynamics 365 for financials actually started with Dynamics NAV. We are both former Dynamics customers as well as former corporate controllers who've worked with these products for many, many years, and we also have been involved with the NAV user group community for quite some time and have the privilege of also being NAV user group all-stars since about 2 or 3 years ago. So we're really excited to be able to share this information with you today. Our session objectives really are quite simple. We want to make sure that you understand the basic functional features of Dynamics 365 for financials. We know that a lot of the information that is out there today is related to how to sell the product and how to implement the product. But oftentimes there's not a whole lot of information on how to use the product. So we've begun teaching a class in the last couple of months, kind of a deep dive class in partnership with Liberty Grove Software on how to get started with using Dynamics 365 with financials and how to even go further with this product. So the evolution of this product and our experience with training for using this product is what brings this webinar to you today. We want to make sure that you guys not only understand how to use the basic functional features of the product, but you also understand how to keep up with how this product changes. I always say that the evolving nature of Dynamics 365 for financials is one of the most challenging things that we have with attending training for this product. So I want to make sure that you guys also understand where you can go to find more resources for this product. So those are our 3 objectives: understand basic functional features, keep up with the ever-changing nature of this product, and learn where to go to get that information. So I'm going to start you off with just a little bit of an overview. This is a slide from a recent conference related to the roadmap for all of the Dynamics 365 products along with the Dynamics products. And this really illustrates for me how complex the messaging related to this product has been. It's been tough to figure out exactly what is going on with how this product is being released. And I'm sure that even today, some of this information is changing. I saw more announcements going out in the news just recently about the naming convention for this product. But I wanted you to understand where we're focusing our effort today and exactly which product we're talking about today. We are focusing in on Microsoft Dynamics 365 for financials, which is now being called Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Edition. Some of the configuration of that product has changed, and there are some different elements that are being involved and even being rolled out in the very short future related to that. But we are talking about that particular product. We are not talking about the Enterprise Edition for Dynamics 365. So let's just make sure that everybody understands what's happening there. I'm going to change my screen and show for you guys a couple of resources related to how you can keep up with this. These are all things that Amanda and I reference regularly when we try to revise our class material when we teach every month. So the first resource that I really want to point you to is the roadmap for Dynamics 365. Now there's quite a bit of information here in 3 different areas. The first is what things are new with the product, what things are in development with the product, and then what things have been previously released. So for those of you who are experienced with the Dynamics NAV product, you will find that many of the features are similar to identical with the Dynamics NAV product, but with Dynamics 365 for financials, not all of the features are yet available in that product. So if you're looking to see which features are available, be sure to reference the previously released information. If you're looking for what's coming up, reference what's in development. And if you're looking at what's come through most recently, take a look at the What's New tab. This particular site is updated very regularly with the different capabilities of the software. I also want to point out that this product today is only available for North America. So one of the big questions that we have with Dynamics 365 for financials is, will that stay the same or will that be changing? So we believe with some of the recent news that this will be rolled out to the UK, Denmark, and Netherlands sometime this year. That's as far as I'm going to go. As far as saying exactly when it's going to show up, you guys know what I know as far as what's out there in the news. And one of the other questions we also get is, will Dynamics 365 have all the features of NAV? I'll let you guys decide for yourself on what will happen and when that will happen. I think the biggest question will be when that will happen. One more resource to point out to you guys for additional information about Dynamics 365 is keeping up with the announcements for new capabilities of the software. I found that the community.dynamics.com site is the best place to keep track of that. And each month there's a release. You can see we've got February, March. This one is May that I'm showing you. So if you're looking for information about what's been released each month, especially related to a build number, this is where you can find that information. So that's just a quick tour of some of the resources that are available to you to help you understand what's happening with this this product that continues to evolve. For the rest of the time, Amanda and I are going to spend time inside the product. We're not going to be looking at PowerPoint slides today. We want to be able to focus on the different functions of the product so that you guys can get as deep a dive as we can cover in 1 hour. So Amanda's going to cover a couple of sections related to user interface, sales, and purchasing. We'll transition back to me so I can talk about some of the accounting features in the product. We'll talk a little bit about implementation of the product, and we'll have about 10 minutes, we hope, at the end for some Q&A. We've got a big group here today, so if you have questions, please feel free to put those questions in the chat. We probably won't pause to answer those questions until we get to the end of the hour. And with that, Amanda, are you ready for me to change you to be the presenter?
I sure am.
Very good. All right, that should be to you now.
Yep, just making sure I'm showing the right thing.
And
right.
I can see your screen.
Excellent. Great. So thanks, Carrie. That was a great start off. And you're absolutely right about how quickly all of this is changing. So let's just hope that since the last time I was in here, no major changes have happened. I'm going to start with the user interface. And when you first log into Dynamics 365, you'll notice that I have kind of a navigation bar on my left here, and my computer is acting up right now. I apologize. And some graphical representations of some of the data, as well as some quick links, if you will, to get to other items. But I want to start with the ribbon. Up here you can see that there are two tabs that I could access directly from the home page. And if I click on one of them, I apologize, there's something going on with my computer right now. If I click on one of them, you'll notice that it opens up just like you would see in any other Microsoft product, that ribbon, giving you quick access to other locations within the program. Now, what I can see in my ribbon here is dependent on the role center that I am accessing. Right here, you can see that I am accessing the accountant role center. So all of the quick access cues and actions and reports directly on that role center are ones that are linked and important to the accountant role. If I were to look at the other options real quickly inside of Dynamics 365, you can see that there are already a few other options for Role Center. I'm not going to change them because it does take some time. I have to log out and log back in. But if I were to change to a sales order processor, for instance, the information that's quickly available from my home screen here or my Role Center would change to more of a sales order processing view. You can see that the accountant role does have a number of activities and quick links to things that are not only accounting, but I can get to general ledger information here, but I can also look at what purchase documents are due today very quickly. And this is essentially a filtered view based on data that is in the system due date. So here, purchase documents due today. So if I were to look at my due date here, you can see that the system thinks everything that's due for 3/31, of course, is due today because we're way past that date. Also, from the Role Center, especially in the accountant's role, I can quickly get to a specific general ledger accounts if I want to. So if there are accounts, if I'm a GL accountant and I have to manage certain accounts very quickly, I can change what I see right here. And maybe I also have an expense account that I need to keep my eye on. So I'm going to simply just choose it, and now it is a part of this quick view for me, and I can drill into it just by clicking on that hyperlinked number. My screen is flickering quite a bit, and I apologize. There's something going on with my computer, so I apologize for the flickering. Hopefully it's not going to make anybody seasick. The same thing with vendors here. If I have specific vendors that I need to manage, I can add them. I also have some default charts that I can take a look at straight from my Role Center, where I can change the chart, and I can also change the period length, or the chart itself, or the period length, or the period itself. So if I'm in months and I want to continue to the next section, I would just go to the next period, and it will move forward in that area. The next thing I have on my Role Center here in the accountant is the cash flow forecast. The really key thing to notice from the cash flow forecast too is this Cortana intelligence. So Dynamics 365 has built right into it the capability of artificial intelligence, if you will, using your historical data. So I am getting some intelligence here based on the forecast that I have created using all of my historical data, and it'll take and look at all of the information that has happened and give me a good idea of what I should expect over the next few months based on that data. When you first start with Dynamics 365 and you don't have a ton of transactional history yet, it will not give you Cortana intelligence until you have enough history. I have not yet been able to determine what that amount of history is, but eventually it will work for you. And then finally, I'm going to come back to how this works, but I wanted to show you this report inbox where you can see I have a report sitting out here for me to look at, and I scheduled it, and we're going to come back to scheduling in just a minute. So that is the Role Center for an accountant, but as I mentioned, as you change your Role Centers dependent on the role that you do, you will get different views. The other thing is anywhere in the system, I can do some sort of emailing if I want. So if, for instance, I have a customer who is requesting a copy of an invoice, I'm gonna go to my sales invoices, and I'm going to either take a look at it or directly from the list I can send it by email. But I'm going to go take a look at the invoice itself. And yep, that's the invoice I want to send. So I'm going to send this document according to their profile. And I'm going to actually change this because this customer said no, they don't want it emailed, but now they've asked me for it. So I'm going to click that. And the email settings have not been done for this. And I realize that I'm in Carrie's company and not my own, and that might be why. However, once the email settings are done, which are very quickly done in the assisted setup, which Carrie is going to go over later, that will open up the box for you to do any modification that you want to and very quickly send it. Right now, the functionality to print to a printer does not exist in Dynamics 365. However, you can print to PDF. So if I wanted to create a report of my chart of accounts very quickly, I don't want to do any filtering. I have many options. I can send it to Word or Excel, but I want to send it to a PDF document. And just like that, I have my chart of accounts. Now I can print it directly to my printer if I want, or I can choose to just view it on my screen. You might remember on the Role Center I pointed out the report inbox. What that is it allows me to create a schedule of a report that I might want. So for instance, I know that when I come in tomorrow, I'm going to need my accounts receivable report. So I'm going to schedule it because I don't need it today, and I still am doing transactions on it. So I'm going to choose my accounts receivable report, whichever filtering options I want to do. Maybe I want to see their own currency, and I want the detail as well. And no additional filtering on it, but then I will send it to schedule. So I'm going to click OK on that, and another box comes up, and I have a few more options. Do I want to send it to PDF, Word, Excel, or do I just want to process it? This processing only is for some functions postings that work through reports, but most reports we actually just want to schedule. So I want to schedule an earliest start and date time. I want it to print today still. And I want to change this time to, let's change it to 9:20 a.m. I am Central. And I'm going to end it just at 10 a.m. today. And I click OK. And it tells me that the report has been scheduled and that it will show up in the report inbox when it's completed. So if I go back to my Role Center, all the way back home here, now the report that I just scheduled will not show up. However, this is a report that I scheduled first thing this morning so that I could show it. And here you can see if I click on it, it opens up that PDF report that I had asked for. Now, when I first did it, you can see there's no detail because I did not select that option. And just like that, you have a good way of putting your reports out there for when you need them and not necessarily at the moment. Then the final thing here in the user interface is contacts. I will barely scratch the first surface with contacts, but I will say that the functionality that already exists on Dynamics 365 for contacts is pretty extensive. They do have some additional information that additional functionality that will be out there, but it already has a large piece of what I would say is a light CRM capability. So here you can see I'm in the contact list, and I have these bolded contacts and the non-bolded contacts. You can also see that based on the numbers that they're not in number order. They are actually in the order of the company that they are related to. Now I very quickly added another column there. You can click left or right on the header of any list and do choose columns to see if there are any other fields there that you want to expose. Now here you can see that both of these contacts are related to Alpine House, which is why in my sorted list that they're showing up this way. Now I could sort by number if I wanted to, or I could go back to my company sort. You can sort on any of the fields that are exposed there in that list view. So the bolded contact is my company contact, and any non-bolded ones underneath that are the people within that company. So you can manage any number of contacts for a single company this way. So if you have 3 different people that you have to contact within a company for different reasons, maybe it's their purchasing department, their accounts payable department, and their sales department, all of that can be managed and quickly accessed through the contacts. You can drive into that through their customer card as well and back that way. You can also provide additional information about people. You know, what type of job do they have? There are none listed in here. What type of, what are their related contacts? So if Paul had multiple employees that were also linked to Alpine House, I could see them all directly there. So at a very high level, you can see all of the information that you can connect with this. If I were to drill back into the related contacts and take a look at Alpine House, from here too I can see what type of company contact this is. Maybe I don't know that they're a customer, so I'm trying to figure out, is this a customer or vendor? And just like that, I can see that this is a customer contact. And it will tell me, and I could drill back into that customer right from the contacts. If the information is there, you can also segment it by industry and provide web resources as well. With the capability of all those contacts, you can see how managing the business that you do with your customers and vendors could be much easier done in one place rather than having to go to some sort of sales relationship manager outside of the system. If I were to look now at my customers, you can see right from my customer list, I have a couple of options on how I view it. I can view it in this tiled view, or I can go into the list view. I personally like the list view. And once I've identified the customer that I need to do any work with, I want to create a sales quote, and I can do that right from that customer list. Because I was highlighted on that customer, it already filled in all of the information that I want to know about that customer. A little bit of a refresh issue. I can also see that this customer has an overdue balance, so the system is already telling me that I might potentially have an issue with placing this order. So very quickly, I can enter an order for this customer, or quote for this customer. I can provide the information of where I want it to ship out of. And because I have done that, the system will also tell me whether or not I have items available. You can see here that I actually don't have any items available. Now I don't have the system set up to prevent me to ship negative, so I can certainly do that to follow this process through. I'm currently in a sales quote. If the customer has agreed that this is the order that they want, with the push of a button, I convert this quote to an order. And it says, hey, do you want to take a look at the order? Yeah, I sure do. I want to see what I have to do now to invoice them and ship it to them. Now you can see that I'm in a sales order, and it's still all of the same information that existed in my quote, but now I have the capability to finish this order and ship and invoice it. So here you can see that right away I can ship and invoice at the same time. I'm going to do that. And let's just say, though, I only had 5 that I could send to them. I also want to make sure that I update my posting date. And you'll notice when I use a T like that, it means today, and it's going to update with today's date. And just like that, I'm going to ship and invoice. You do have the capability of separating those two functions if you have 2 different people doing that. And as that processes, this is going to create that shipment as well as the invoice related to it. You can see now that I have a quantity shipped and a quantity invoiced. Since I didn't do the whole thing, it didn't ask me if I wanted to take a look at the posted invoice, but you can see right from here I can navigate directly to that posted sales invoice. And there is that posted sales invoice. To do a credit memo for an item like this, you have one option, and that is to create the credit memo and bring in the details. But before I go and show you that, I want you to see the correct and cancel up here. If you have a very simple invoice that went out that was not linked to a purchase order, you can use the correct or cancel options. The correct meaning it will automatically post a reversal of the original and create a new invoice that you can then modify to correct. So if there were pricing issues on the first one. And then the cancel just does the original sales credit memo. The key to remember here is that it doesn't work if you used a purchase order. It has to have come directly from a sales invoice. So if I want to do a credit memo for this order, I navigate to the sales credit memos, choose new. That was my Alpine customer. Once I have selected the customer, I am going to copy the posted invoice and that's the one I just did. Oops. Uh-oh. Highlight that, click OK. And I don't want to recalculate the lines. And what it's done now is it's brought in all the original information. If they were only returning 2, I can update that. And from here, I can post it, and I have now done my credit memo for a return. The purchasing side is very similar to that, with the exception of there is no purchase quote at this time. There is just the purchase order. So again, from the vendor, I can very quickly create a purchase order. For items that need to be replenished. I do need to update my tax area code in order to be able to post this. On the line, and I need to do that from this header record. Now you can see it's in there. Put in my vendor invoice number from here, and I'm going to receive the entire order directly from the purchase order to create my purchase invoice. And I'm going to receive and invoice it all at the same time. Now before I pass it back to Carrie, the last thing that I want to touch on is locations. I mentioned as I was doing the sales order that I can determine where I want a shipment to ship out of. The same on the purchasing side, I can determine where I need it to be sent into or shipped to. So if you have multiple locations for your business, physical or virtual, if you will, within the same building, you can create locations to manage your inventory. I will see a lot of times, even if you only have one location, one physical location, you might have a secondary one for non-conforming inventory or quality so that you can park it in there until it has gone through whatever process is necessary in order to provide good saleable inventory or to return it back to your vendor. Inside of the location, in addition to the address, you can determine the tax area code. If your purchases are taxable and need to be taxed at the location that they are shipped into, you can identify that, so as you're creating your purchase orders, all of that information will default there. And you can also provide that contact information for that specific location for your business. And I think, Carrie, that is my very quick review of user interface, sales, and purchasing, and it is up to you now for accounting.
Fantastic. If you could make me a presenter, I'd be happy to show everybody what we have there.
Yep.
All right. So you guys should be looking at my nav now. Looks like that's showing. Great. So thank you for that user interface and sales and purchasing tour, Amanda. Very important to understand those base concepts. Now we're going to go just a little bit deeper into some of the finance functions so you guys can see what's behind the scenes in quite a few areas of the software. So our first concept that we really want to talk about with Dynamics 365 for Financials is our chart of accounts. You can see that we've got a pretty standard chart of accounts, and in this case this is using a natural account only. And we have the option, of course, to use multi-segmented numbers if we would like, but one of the reasons that we don't have to use multi-segmented numbers is we have the concept of dimensions that are applied to the natural numbers in our chart of accounts. We'll talk about that in just a little bit, but I want you to notice as you look at the chart of accounts screen that we have the ability to do a few things related to applying beginning and ending totals. So we can do some simple calculations right here on the screen so that we can get a quick status of exactly what's going on with our accounts. And each of these records goes to an individual ledger account card that about that particular account. And some of the additional things that we have are things like account category and subcategory, which help us to build the financial statement reports that come out of the box with the product. So if we take a look at the chart of accounts, yes?
You are cutting in and out every once in a while. I just wanted you to be aware of that.
Okay, let me know if that does not improve,
okay.
And I'll see if I can make an adjustment. All right, so if we take a look at what's behind the scenes with our chart of accounts, and the next concept that we want to talk about is our posting groups. So if we take a look at the posting groups that are available in the system, these are all of the options that we have, and there's quite a few of them. And we do have the option of looking at these much more deeply, and let me go to the different screen here so you can see that. If we look at what we have here, you can see that we have general business posting groups, general product posting groups, and those are held in combination with each other. Each of these defines what accounts are used in the system when you post transactions. So in conjunction with the chart of accounts, posting groups create the map for how the system posts things to your general ledger. That means that this is completely behind the scenes for your end users. They do not need to be making decisions about which accounts are affected by which transactions. That's all pre-mapped and pre-configured in the system by whoever puts that together at the time that you implement the system. And with that information in the background, the way that that ties to those transactions is through your master records, like your customers and your vendors and your items. So if we take a look at one of our customer records here, we can see that they'll have two posting groups that are designated here. If I scroll down here, I can see my general business posting group and my customer posting group. Now, these are named the same thing, but they actually point to two different maps in the system, one of which tells the system where to post the revenue and related accounts, and one of which tells the system where to post the accounts receivable and other related customer accounts. Okay, same principle applies when we talk about our vendors and our items. So posting groups together with the chart of accounts are what allows the system to map to the correct place inside the system. Our third primary concept related to accounting is dimensions. And if we take a look at what we have for dimensions in this example, I'm going to go to my general ledger setup, and I have a few dimensions that are defined here. We're not going to go into these too deeply other than to point out that in this case we have 3 dimensions assigned: department, customer group, and region. And that if we look at the setup behind dimensions and we look for dimension values, we can see that each of these lists, let's pick on region, has some values behind it, so north, south, south, east, and west. Okay, and really what dimensions allow you to do is these allow you to add data tags to your transactions. And this is what replaces the multi-segmented chart of accounts. So if we take a look again, remember that with our posting groups, we went back to our master data, same concept with our master data and dimensions. If we go back to our customers and we take a look at this customer and we go into their dimensions, we can see that they have customer group and region defined, just like they have posting groups defined from that card. So along with pointing to the correct accounts when transactions are posted with using posting groups, we can also attach the correct data tags using dimensions so that when we report against this data in the system, all of that information comes from that master data automatically. Now, there are many other capabilities that allow us to adjust and change for that, but we will not be going into that today. Now, let's go into a little bit more of the functionality of the system. I want to talk a little bit about journal entries and the journal concept inside of Dynamics 365. We do have the ability to use many different journals throughout the system, and you'll see that it kind of feels like journals are everywhere. We have general journals, purchase journals, payment journals, cash receipt journals. We even have recurring journals, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. But I want to point out that Dynamics 365 uses a journal concept that allows you to do many different functions from these different journals. So if we look at the list that we have on the left-hand side, let's talk about the functions of those. Our general journal will do just that, allow us to post a regular journal entry, something that we might make as a one-off correction during our month-end close. Our purchase journal, that will allow us to create very simple purchase invoices in the system. Payment journals allow us to pay our vendors, so we can generate paper check payments or electronic payments using the payment journal. Our sales journals will allow us to create very simple sales invoices, and our cash receipt journals will allow us to receive cash in to our system. Now, in some cases, we have other ways of doing this. Amanda showed how we can create a sales invoice from a quote and then an order and then an invoice. So that's a different way, a different pathway to create an invoice. And in the example of cash receipts journal, we even have an additional place where we can create a deposit. So think about journals as how you can get information into the system. I'm going to show you one example of recurring general journals where we can look at the concept of how we can set up our journal entries very easily and so they can be repeatable when we do our month-end process. Now you can have as many of these as you like, and I've set up just a very simple example here for the purposes of pointing out that we have the option of creating either fixed or variable journals, and we also have the ability to have an automatic reversing journal. So in this case, I've created a variable journal, which simply allows the system to zero out my dollars. So if I wanted to make this a $50 journal entry, I could do this. And notice the date on 10/31/2017. I'm going to choose to post this. When I post this and it confirms, my date will change to 11/30, and I can now type in a different amount for the next month. Okay, but it maintains all of my other information, and you can actually use this and get quite complicated with it. So a very simple example of how you can post that same thing, simply changing those numbers. And if you don't want to change those numbers, simply change it to fixed, and you can book that same amount every month. So let's talk a little bit about how we manage transactions that end up on our customer and vendor lists. Just like what Amanda had illustrated with what we have going on with the invoicing process, this process is really the same between customers and vendors. So I think that I will actually pick on our vendors here to show you something from that side as well. If we take a look at our record for First Up Consultants, we can see that we have a couple of different fields where we can get information. We've got information here in our header related to our balance. We've got some information here on our fact boxes. We even have a section, and I'm sorry, that's on the sales side. On the sales side, we have a section related to statistics that gets us into even more information. So not identical, but very similar. If I go into this particular area, when I'm looking at the vendor ledger entries, I can see everything that they have on their account that's currently open right now. And I could even do a few simple things here to be able to apply these entries. So if this payment was sitting out here and needed to be applied, I could simply use the apply entries function and apply it to those invoices, either in full or in part. And I could also unapply entries if I had made a mistake and needed to make a correction. So nice, simple pathways to be able to manage what ends up on those customer and vendor records. Now, let's dig a little bit deeper now. We've talked about kind of what maps things and how we deal with where things end up. And one of the functions that we often have in the finance department is needing to research things, questions, and maybe show things, evidence to our auditors. So we've got a really strong audit trail inside of Dynamics 365 for financials. And in one area here, we've got a collection of our posted documents. So this is a quick way to get to posted documents of all types so that I can get to those very easily. But I can dig even deeper into these in a number of different ways. If I choose perhaps this first invoice, if I dig into this one, I can get to the originating document so that I could see all the details behind this particular document. This can't be changed, of course, because it is a posted document. But I can get even a little bit further here, and by choosing to navigate on this particular document, I can see even more detail. If I was navigating from another place in the software, which I certainly could, I could get to the originating document as I have already. But I could also dig into the actual general ledger entries that made up this particular transaction and all of the subledger entries that were related to this. So if I'm needing to research this on a very detailed level, I can go into that from here. I can see all of the accounts that were affected, and I can see the individual entry numbers that were generated as a result of the audit trail in Dynamics 365. So I can also look at these a different way by going into the general ledger register. So I can see exactly, once it switches over here, I can see exactly which person posted this and what the source code is, what things they were doing, maybe even which journal batch that came from, and again, a tie-in to those entry numbers. So great audit trail functions that are available within this system. Let's talk about two more financial concepts before we move on to some other things. I'd like to cover how financial reporting is covered in Dynamics 365 for financials. So we do have the concept of account schedules that creates our financial reporting, and Microsoft has done a great job of designing some nice out-of-the-box reports for us to use. And really, these start with the definition of those accounts inside of the chart of accounts. So as I pointed out previously, we have account categories and subcategories that are linked to each of these accounts to help us to define where those particular accounts need to go. If I trace that through to a more detailed area here, I can look at GL account categories, and I can see that this is similar to my chart of accounts, but not the same, because I've got groups of each of these different accounts. So all of my cash accounts can be defined as an asset. All of my prepaid expenses can also be defined as an asset, but in, of course, a separate category. So I've got a little bit of work to do with setup here to define how those reports exist, but once I have this fully defined, I can use this function to generate account schedules. And that's going to trigger the creation of these schedules in their pre-configured form. Now, this is a view of all of the account schedules that do exist out there today. And you can see a few different things. Now, all of these come with the demo package for Dynamics Nav 365. And there's some differences here. There's a group here that starts with I in the front. There's a group here that starts with M, and there are a few other things. So the ones that start with I, you can see if you look at the description, they say data for whatever chart. Okay, so you may have noticed when you looked at the original Role Center that there were some charts that had some data there. The engine behind those charts is account schedules, and this is where that information comes from. So if I take a look at the overview for this particular chart, I can see that I've got current period -1, and current period 2 because I'm showing 3 different periods in that chart. I've got it set for whatever my current month is, and it picks up these different categories of accounts from my chart of accounts. So this particular account schedule has been pre-configured in order to feed the data for that chart on the Role Center. So similarly, if I look at these particular ones, the ones that begin with an M, these are my out-of-the-box financial statements. And these also come from those category definitions. And I've got this information showing a complete income statement based on those definitions. So I can, with any of these reports, choose to either print this report. So let's send this to PDF so you can see what that looks like. And I can also very easily download this into Excel. So if I say export to Excel and open this up, I can also send any of this information into Excel so that I can analyze it as well as putting it into a nicely formatted form, printing it to PDF. The last thing I'll show you related to account schedules is that you're not limited to only what this comes with. This will get you started quite quickly, but if you want to design these on your own, you certainly are able to design these on your own. Every account schedule has the ability, and a message will come up with those pre-configured reports. You probably don't want to change those. You want to create a new one and create that on your own. But I wanted to make sure you got a chance to see the design view related to these account schedules. So you have the ability to create any custom report in account schedules that you'd like. Now, an important thing to remember is that account schedules only report against the general ledger, so they're not going to report against non-financial measures, things like quantities. But you'll be able to report onto anything related to your general ledger transactions. So let's talk about one last concept related to accounting functions for Dynamics 365 for financials. I want to talk about the ability to do a soft close. So with this product, we have the ability to define accounting periods. And you can see in this particular case that we have a few years that are showing as closed. So 2016 are all in a closed status. So we have the ability to step through each of our years and close those out. there are really two primary processes where we close the year and then where we close the income statement, right? So we need to roll our income statement balances into our retained earnings. And when we do that, Dynamics 365 does create a special status on the date to show us that that's a closing entry. So let's take a look at that so that you can see what that looks like. And this is unique, where we will not see this at any other time of the year. This is only related to the close of the fiscal year. So we have a posting date with a C in front of it for our final year-end entry. And you would see this mirrored on the other side of things on your income statement accounts to close those out. The unique thing about Dynamics 365 for financials is that we do have the ability to do a soft close, where we could choose to perhaps do a substantial amount of our work, and we could close the year. We could move on with our new year with posting transactions into the system, and we could, if we decided that perhaps maybe we'd missed something, or maybe we might have an audit adjustment that needs to get posted, we could go post that transaction to the prior year, and the only thing that we would need to do then is go through the process to close the income statement again. That entry would be marked as a prior year entry, and we would also have an additional close income statement entry that would show up in this list for that single or maybe a couple journal entries. So we have the ability to do a close. That way we don't have to do anything special to deal with our financial reporting in the next year, because we're able to do a clean close and then just pick up those additional entries. 10 minutes left. Excuse me. I was going to spend a little bit of time talking about implementation of Dynamics 365. I think I'm going to spend 1 minute on that, just so for those of you who are wondering what your options are, you have an idea of where to go with that, and then we'll open things up for questions. When we're talking about implementing Dynamics 365 for financials, we do have the option of a setup. And when we look at assisted setup, we have quite options with yes.
Carrie, your voice is breaking up quite a bit.
Oh, I'm so sorry about that. I'll do my best to adjust, but I might be better off to hand it off to questions. Let me try for another 30 seconds, and if it doesn't clear up, we'll go to questions. So when we are working on implementation of Dynamics 365, we have a lot of wizard-based help for assisted setup, and we have some great options for data import using some pre-configured templates that come with the system. And most recently, Microsoft has included some rapid capability.
Sorry, Carrie, you're pretty much, your audio is pretty much
related to implementation, and let's open things up for questions.
No questions? If you have a question and you have yourself muted, go ahead and drop something into the chat box or take yourself off mute and just give us a holler.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Hi, I'm in the UK, so obviously we've got this upcoming in the summer, so we're told. And one of the questions I have is, do we have any sort of table or any sort of mapping that shows what is in financials versus traditional starter pack for, let's say, NAV 2017? Not necessarily broken down by localization, but essentially you mentioned that I think it was purchase quote, something like that was not available. Yeah.
Right.
So I'd be interested to see if there is some sort of even a high level of saying, oh, if you're looking for this, then financials doesn't have it.
Right. So there isn't, and it's a good question. It's something that actually Carrie and I have talked about doing ourselves, especially because everything is changing so quickly with the releases happening every month.
Yeah.
The best way to do that is to go to the roadmap. Carrie, can you bring the roadmap up again? And take a look at, there are 3 sections inside of it, and they do a pretty good job inside of that of showing what's already out there versus what's in development and what's been released. So if you search for purchase quotes and you don't find it at all, that means it's nowhere yet. But if you find it, it'll show you which section it is in.
Okay, so just to also clarify that when we're saying it's not yet, it means that when this releases as financials, it's a scaled down product. I can see there's a lot of functionality that is traditional nav, right?
Yeah.
And that would change over time when you were saying there's going to be the full nav eventually. So that means that everything you see on the on-prem version, you will also see in here.
Yeah, that's our expectation, what we've heard, and we can definitely see from the activities that are occurring in their development and how quickly things are being brought into the system, that is likely where we're going to end up.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yep. So Carrie has brought up on the screen all of the links and the resources that she talked about earlier. That 365 roadmap really is a great place to start, but then definitely if you take a look at the other links there, and then keep in mind that there is in-depth training being offered by Liberty Grove with Carrie and I as your trainers on all of the detailed, well, not all of, because there's already more functionality that exists in the system than we can even cover in our 2 weeks of classes. Any other questions? No other questions? I know that Carrie was definitely dealing with audio issues. I was dealing with my computer itself, and of course, as soon as I was done, it stopped freaking out. But I think, Carrie, did you also provide in the slide deck our contact information?
Yeah, our contact information is available. I think it was at the beginning of the deck, so let me see if I can back up and get us to that spot so that you can send additional questions if you'd like. So there's our contact information, and we're teaching these classes once a month with Dynamics 365 for Financials. So we're happy to answer your questions and get back to you as we can on the things that you're wanting to learn about Dynamics 365 for Financials.
If there are no other questions, then I think we'll take the time and give you 2 minutes back to your day. And we look forward to hearing from anyone if you have any more questions, or hopefully seeing any of you show up in our classes.
Thank you for attending, everyone.